the next point. We should ensure whatever we see is clear.
That means work is being done. We can see that it is in opposite direction.
Hello, dear viewers and listeners at home. You are welcome to another segment of the e-learning lesson on radio television program. I still remain your computer studies teacher, Ganiat Olarinoye. Our topic for discussion today is on concept of computer files. Dear students, I know you are familiar with the word files. Computer files. So today's topic is on concept of computer files. When we talk about files, files are records or collection of records of a particular item. Take for example, we have the school database. As you are in school, we have a register. Our register or our attendance register can serve as a file, because we have collection of student records. In each class, we have different records of each student. We have the admission number, the student's name, the student's sex, religion, etc. All these fields consist of the record, and each student in the particular class have his or her record. So the collection of these records makes what we call a file. So therefore, your class register can serve as a file. Now, we have the concepts of the computer files. Starting with the definition of some terms, like the computer files, we have the records, we have the field, and we have data item. These are some of the terminologies that we check in the concept of computer files. We have types of data items. We have computer file structure. We have types of file organization method, method of accessing files, computer file classification, and the criteria for classifying files. The definition of computer files. Computer files can be defined as the most basic unit of data that users can store on a disk. Every program, image, video, songs, document is stored as a file. We have images when we are talking about the graphics or the pictures. We have songs, we have documents. All these can be saved on a file, and each file can serve as a disk. Disk when we are filing or a data, as the file or as the data is being recorded, so it's being programmed in a document. And we all know that our program is a set of instructions that direct the hardware on what to do. We have a record. A record is a collection of related data items, or what we call a feed, like name of students. We have like Aisha, Amina. All this can be referred to as a field, or we call it data item. Each record normally corresponds to specific units of information. For example, student admission number, we have the student's name, we have the student's score, student's sex, student's age. All these are called as a record because the collection of each field makes a record. That is the reason why I gave you example as your student attendance register, because you are all familiar with the register. We have a field. Data items are physically arranged as a field in a computer file. Their length may be fixed or variable. So it may be a specific amount of character or it varies. It depends on the character that consists on the data or on the data item. We have the data item. Data item is the smallest unit of information stored in a computer file. It is a single element used to represent a fact, such as employees' names, items, price, among others. This is data items. The next is that we have types of data items. Dear students, This question reflects in 2016 question in which you are asked to list types of data items. We have three major types of data items. The first, we have the numeric, we have the alphabetic, and we have the alphanumeric. The first is the numeric. These types of data item consist of numbers, and this number ranges from 0 to 9. Don't get confused. Don't say, is it just only 0 to 9? Numbers consist from 0 to 9. Any other number is the replication of the 0 to 9, because 0 is a number, 1 is a number, 2 up to 9. After 9, we have 10. And you know, the 10 consists of 1 and 0. So it's within the range of the 0 to 9. So that is the reason why numbers is from 0 to 9. We have the alphabets. These types of data items consist of letters A to Z, being it either the lowercase, that's the small letters, or the uppercase. It is the same depending on which one you choose to use. Either the uppercase, which consists of the small letters, and the uppercase consists of capital letters. The third is the alphanumeric. This is the combination of alphabetic and numeric characters, and is used to describe the collection of Latin letters and Arabic digits, or a text constructed from this collection. So the alphanumeric, this consists of your letters and your numbers. That is why it is called alphanumeric. The alpha stands for the alphabet, while the numeric stands for the number. So it's the combination of the two. The next is that we have the file structure. That is how our file is being constructed, starting from the smallest to the highest. The first is the data. You are all familiar with data. What is the data? You know what data means. As right from your JSC, Junior Secondary School 1, we have the definition of data. We define it as the raw facts, or symbols or figures. And now, the data item is the smallest unit of information stored in a computer file. We have the field, is a collection of related data items. We have the record. A record is a collection of related fields, and we have a file. The file is the collection of records, and it's called a file. Look at the structure of the file. We started from the data, being the smallest unit, because it's the combination of this data that give us the field. Take note, we have the data before the field. So it's the field that is the collection of the data, which is the first structure on the first diagram of the structure there. The next is the record. And this record, as I earlier told you, is the collection of your related field. I gave you an example, like the student's name, student's scores, student's age, student's sex. Each of this is a field, and the collection of this field make a student's record. Take, for example, in a class, we have a student called Amina. Amina is her name. Let's say Amina Aliyu. We have her age. Her age is 13. Her sex, female. Her religion, Islam. All this, or each of this field, when we have the collection of this field, that's what makes the record of Amina. So the collection of the fields makes the record Amina. We have another student, Ngozi. Let's say Ngozi John. Her name is Ngozi. Her age is 15. Her religion, Christianity. Her sex, female. So each of these is a field. So when we have the collection of this field of Ngozi, makes Ngozi's record. So we have Amina's record, we have Ngozi's record, and other students' record. When we have the collection of all these records, give us a file. And we refer the file as a what? As the register. Your class register can serve as a file. So please take note. The next is that we have types of file organization. There are different types of file organization method. We have the serial file organization, we have the sequential, we have the random, we have the index. Let's take each one after the other. We have the serial file. A serial file is one in which records have been stored and the other in which they have been arising. They have not been sorted into any particular order. Yes, as you give a file, as you are entering it, so is serially. Take for example, when we have serial, you know what's meant by serial number. So when we are following it on normal, from 1, 2, 3, as the data come, we entered it. The next one come, we entered it. So that is the method of serial method. The next is the sequential method. In a sequential file organization, records are organized in a sequence by which they were added. A sequential file contains records organized in the order they were entered. The order of the record is fixed. That's sequential method file organization. The next is the indexed. An index file organization contains reference numbers, like the employees' numbers, that identify a record in relation to other records. These references are called the primary keys that are unique to a particular record. When we mean what we mean by the primary key, that each of this file has a particular number that differentiates it from others. That is we have the primary key and we have the alternative key. The alternative key can also be defined to allow alternate methods of accessing the record. We either use the primary key or the alternative key to differentiate our file under the index file. The next is the random file. This is a file organized via an index. It is also called a direct file, or we call it a direct access file. It enables quick access to specific record or other elements within the file, rather than having to read the file sequentially. When we said random, you know what's randomly, that it does not specify any direction. It is being given randomly before it is being sorted. That is the random file. The next, we have method of accessing. After the file organization, we organize the file. After organizing, we have the method of accessing, because you have to access your file after being organized. The first, we still have the serial file. My dear students, don't get confused, because I mentioned the file or the serial file during the organization method. It's still the same. That is organization method, and we have the accessing method. We have the serial file. The only way to access a serially organized file is serially. That's using the numbers. Using tape, for instance, we can use the tape. Take, for example, like your tape recorder. You know, it says in track. Your tape recorder is in track. So it is being organized serially, because, like, take for example, if a musician is recording music, it has to go stand by stand. Not that the last stanza will come before the first. No, the first before the second, before the third. So it goes serially. That is why we use the example of a tape disc. It can serve as an example of a serial file. We have the sequential file. The method of access used is still serial, but of course the files are now in sequence. And for this reason, the time sequential is often used in describing serial access of a sequential tape file, because the tape is in track, and it is being accessed serially. The next is the random file. The method of accessing random file is randomly. The transaction record keys will be put through the same mathematical formula as were the keys of the master record, those creating the appropriate pocket address, because we have different types of addressing. And this addressing is what? Is specifying the specific the specific location of each data. The next, we have the computer file classification. Computer files are being classified. We have different types of classification of the file. But the major ones that we have are three. We have the master file, we have the transaction file, and we have the reference file. Let's take the master file. There are files of fairly permanent nature. The files are permanent. E.g., we have the customer ledger, we have the payroll, we have the inventory, among others. A feature to know is the regular updating of this file to show a current position. That's the master file. The next is the transaction file. This is also known as the movement file. The reason why we call it movement is because it goes in and out because of the transaction. It is usually used for updating of the master file. This is also known as the movement file. This is made up of various transactions created from the source documents. In a sales ledger application, the file will contain all the orders received at a particular time. We use it to update the master file, that's the transaction file. The next is the reference file. The reference file is a file with a reasonable amount of permanency, that's permanency. Example of data used for reference purpose are price list, tables of rates of pay, name and addresses. These are some of the examples of the reference file. Criteria for classifying a computer files. There are different criteria in which we use to classify a file. Criteria for classifying computer files are: 1, by nature of contents. What's the content or the nature of the content of this file? We can use it to classify the file. It refers to the nature of the file content. Take, for example, like the student's file. We can classify it under the school database academic record because it consists of all students' records, like the student's name, the admission number, student's age, student sex, exam scores. All this refers to the student's records. So for that, it can contain the school database academic record. The next, we have the by organization method. It refers to the way files are arranged, e.g. either serially, sequential, random. That is how our file is being organized. It can choose either in serial method, sequential, or random. The next is by method of storage medium. Storage, we know, is the way we store our data for reference purpose, or it can serve as a memory. It refers to storage device in which a file can only be stored, such as magnetic or optical discs and the magnetic tape, etc. That's how we store our files, by storage medium. Next is that there are some concepts of computer files. Those are all the definitions of the criteria that we give under the computer data files. So, my dear students, all these are referred to as a file. Just take, for example, your class register. That is the most example and the most familiar examples in which you know. So now, let me summarize the lesson. So for your more understanding and for clarity, because we deal with the computer files concept. we talked about some terms or some terminologies under the computer concept. We have the computer files, as I defined earlier, that we said the file can serve as a collection of records of a particular student in a particular class in a school. We have the record, that's the collection of the fields of students. We have a file, and the file is the collection of records. We have types of files. Then this type of files, we said we have the serial file, we have the sequential file, and we have the fields, the data items. All these are some of the terminologies under it. We have organization of methods. What are these organization? How we organize our file according to how we need it or according to reference purpose. We have the serial method, we have the sequential method, we have the random, and we have the index. That's the organization of the file method. The next is how we access our file. How do we access our file? We have 3 types of accessing of file. We have the serial method, we have the sequential method, and we have the random method. And we said we have some criteria that we use in classifying our file. This depends on which content of files we are using, like the nature or the content, what the file contain. I gave you an example earlier on that using your school database academic record, because we are dealing with the students and we have student admission number, because when you come to school, you have to have your admission number, your name, your sex. All this is each of your field or each of your data item that is being collected from for admission purpose. So the combination of these fields makes your record. When we have the collection of each student in a class, because in a class we can have up to 40 or 45 students, and each of these students has his or her particular record. So when we have the collection of all these records, that's what makes a file. And we have the collection of the records in the file when we merge it into a school attendance register. So that is the reason why I said your school attendance register can serve as a file when we are referring to the school academic record. Employees, we can also use an example like the payroll of an employee. The employees must have his or her name, the level, grade level, based on how payment is being paid. So when we refer to this database, we refer to the employees base file. We have the organization, how we organize our file, as earlier discussed in our lesson. We say we have the serial method, we have the sequential, and we have the random access. The sequential in a file organization, we said, are organized in the sequence which they were added. As the record is entered, it's been in a what? In a sequential order. That is the second type, and we have the index. This index deals with a specific key, or we call it a number, because when we touch each of this label or a file with a reference number, it usually makes it easy to access or make it quick to access by using the index key or the index number. And my dear students, we also have the criteria. Those are the criteria, the nature, the organization, and the method. So now, I hope learning has taken place. Before I leave you, I have some assignments for you in order to what? To boost your understanding and for more practices. Now, the assignment goes like this. Assignment question 1. I have some definition. 1, define A. We have a file. B, record. C, field. Let me take it again. Question 1, define A. We have file. B, we have record. C, we have field. Question 2, list 3 types of data items. Question 2, list 3 types of data items. Question 3. State 2 criteria for classifying file in a computer. State 3 criteria for classifying file in a computer. And question 4. Draw a sample of a file structure. Question 4. Draw a sample of a file structure, because these have been taught in the lesson. For more research and more references, you can use these references. We have 1. Computer Studies for Senior Secondary School Education. Computer Studies for Senior Secondary School Education by HITS PLC. Another textbook you can also use, we have New Computer Studies for Senior Secondary School 2. New Computer Studies for Senior Secondary School 2 by J.O.E. Otuka, A.F. Akande, S.L. Ngila. That's New Computer Studies for Senior Secondary School 2 by J.O.E. Otuka, A.F. Akande, S.L. Ngila. For more research or more complaint or question or for submission of your assignment, you can still contact me through my number. I still remain your computer studies teacher, Ganiat Olarinoye, with the following number: 08037377900. I repeat, 08037377900. Stay home, stay safe, keep learning. Have a nice day. Thank you.